Yo, what is good, everybody? This is Joey from the Heart Pirates TCG here, bringing you a tier list for set 7. I'm a little early on this because set 7 releases about a month from now, but I was very excited talking about the possibilities of some of these decks. And obviously, if you guys know that I'm going to be posting on YouTube and Patreon the masterclasses for the decks I really think can compete. I was just kind of thinking in my head what decks can compete, and I came up with a list. Now, this one is a little bit different than the ones I've done previously because I've already filled it out, the entire tier list, and I want to go through each leader and make my give you my reason as to why I chose those leaders in the positions that they're in. Now, they're not exactly organized in terms of tier, but they are like in terms of like position in the tier, but they are organized by tier. So without further ado, let me go ahead and show you guys the categories. All right, so the first category is I'll Miss You Pookie Bear, which is of course Sakazuki. This deck, there's gonna be a video about this. Just trust me. Now the ones that are really small, you guys want to zoom in real quick? The ones that are really small, I got these pictures from a website, but whenever I tried to upload it into the thing, it just was really small. So all the set 7 leaders are actually going to be really small, but everything else should look normal. So yeah, I have Insane. Insane is the tier that I think is like, if I would not be surprised if these leaders won a tournament. Really Good is, in my opinion, like a top, like probably 16 to 32 group of leaders. Like, you're going to consistently see these leaders in like at least top 16, and then like one of these, I think Whitebeard is probably going to be the only one. If you do want to organize it a little bit by tiers, I think Whitebeard's going to be one of the few leaders that you might be a little bit more surprised to see in a top 16 than like some of these other leaders per se. But then we have MLPC, which those of you guys who don't know, MLPC is going to be the tournament that I'm having on June 9th, which is going to be a tournament for only people that have gotten top 64 or higher. Prize support's really good. Make sure to check that out. Links going to be in the description below. But the reason I titled it MLPC is because all of these decks right here, I can see them getting a top 64 finish, which would qualify you for my tournament on June 9th. It is actually going to be a monthly thing. We're going to try to have a tournament that doesn't conflict with other tournaments. So we're probably going to have them mainly on like a Sunday or a Saturday if there are just no tournaments for that day. So that is the MLPC category tier right there. And then we have a locals fund. This is a deck that you could probably win a locals with, or at least like get like top 4 out of locals. A locals jank is a deck that you're just going in there just to test it out to see, can I win with this deck? Probably not, but we'll see. And then Y category is like, there's no reason to play this deck. Why are you playing it? And then not talking about lame deck, this is going to be Nami. Every time I make a tier list, they're like, where's Nami at? We're not talking about it. It's a lame deck. Don't freaking play it. It's lame. But anyway, let's talk about the positionings in the tiers. So like I said, they're not ordered in position of like best deck to worst deck. So if you see Bonnie right here at number 1, it's not actually number 1. These decks are all just decks that I could see winning a tournament. Now, the reason I think Bonnie is so good, I think Bonnie's probably objectively the worst of these 3 right here, because it's just... I want to talk about Bonnie first, though, because Bonnie is a deck that, well, 5 life leaders are amazing, right? 5 life leaders are really amazing, and just having access to the green top end, guys... Green legitimately has the best top end in the entire game. They have Zoro, they have 10 cost Doflamingo, they have 8 cost Kid, they have like 8 cost Rosinante, they have like all of these cards that are just really powerful. On top of her ability to just like basically nullify or mitigate 1 attack per turn. That's just really powerful, on top of just being able to like just stall into the late game where like you can realistically just freeze all of their characters. This deck has a really good matchup into a lot of decks that revolve around playing 10 drops, because you can rest one of their Dons with the new 5 cost Bonnie, the super rare. And obviously, you know, if they, you know, you can't play 10 cost Ace if I'm just freezing one of your Don every turn, which is obviously really powerful. So with that being said, Bonnie is really strong. I do think it's objectively, depending on the matchup, probably the worst of the insane decks, but I do think this deck can win I think this deck is going to win at least like 2 to 4 to 5 big events, depending on how many events we have. It could win more. And then we have Red Purple Law. Guys, this deck is going to be very dominant for a very long time. Set 7, definitely. Set 8, we'll see, but it's looking pretty good in set 8. Well, I have a video coming out on that one pretty soon. But yeah, Law is just really powerful. Its ability to just swarm the board, still be able to maintain resources now with the Reiju, as well as being able to just like not only swarm the board, go aggressive, and gain resources with Reiju and cards like Queen, but it can now also like or not also, but it can also like take away your opponent's cards. So it's like Sokka in a way that like it can bottom deck almost all of your cards on curve, but it also builds a board in the process, and just it's very overwhelming. This is a very gatekeeper style of deck, and it's just really overwhelming for a lot of the decks in the meta, and also has a really good matchup into most of the decks in the meta. I do think Lucci is actually probably low-key the best deck in the entire game next set. Its removal is not only is it a 5-life leader, but its removal is absolutely unreal. Like, I've never felt more hopeless going into a matchup. Like, if I'm playing a deck that just like has to stick characters to the board, and I see a Lucci, I just feel like there's just no hope, because like they did like every single. It's not like Sakazuki where there's some turns where they like set up. Like, this deck can legitimately just kill everything the second it's come out. The only thing that stops it is Sabo, but like there's ways of getting around Sabo. There's like Nightmare Luffy, there's 6-cost Brook, and it's a 5-life leader, and it has access to Gecko, and Tempest Kick Sky Slicer is absolutely an amazing card, and the stage, India's Lobby, plays itself from its trigger. That is absolutely unreal. Like, that's crazy. Yeah, I think Lucci is legitimately the best deck in the game in set 7. Then, like I said, we're going to move on to really good. And again, this is not ordered, so please don't be like, why is Enel, you know? So Enel is really powerful. Having access to Rush Ace and Yamato, it feels like this deck can just never die. And, you know, being able to pop things early now with like Gadatsu, even though Reject is banned, like they can still have access to things like Gadatsu. 9-cost Yamato pops something on curve 2. You know, Katakuri on 8 Dawn can take something away if it really wants to. Rush Enel, Rush Ace. Like, there's just a lot of cards that like this deck can like, and also if it plays like the Ohm Holy, like, you know, kind of Sky Island package, this deck just has a lot of firepower, and on top of it being very, very, very sustainable, it feels like it can rush you down and it can't get punished, because like you have to develop 3 characters on the board to even attempt to go for lethal, and if they heal, you know, in like while you're setting up your characters on board, not only can they pop one of your characters with Yamato, but they can also just like play Ace, heal, and then like swing into one of your rested characters while you're developing a board. And like it just feels like you can't actually like close out games against this deck unless you're playing specific leaders, which is really frustrating. Enel is just, and I feel like Enel is just a very unbalanced like leader in general. It was good in set 5. It's really good in EBO 1, and I think it's even better now with Rush Ace, obviously. So yeah, that's a really powerful deck. I can see it getting a top 16. I can see this winning a tournament too. I feel like it probably doesn't really do good into Bonnie or Law, because Bonnie plays 9-cost Zoro, and then Law obviously can rush it down before it can really have time to set up Ace or Yamato. But this card's really good, and I could see it winning a tournament or 2, but definitely getting into the top 16. Definitely, you know, a few in the top 32. So Perona as well. I'm still doing some testing on Perona, so I'm not entirely sure exactly where it lines up in, you know, among these other leaders. But from what I can tell, like, its card advantage is absolutely unreal, and it has access to all the same great cards that Black has access to, but it has so much draw power too with the You Can Be My Samurai engine. So I do think this leader is really good, and also I have an alt art for this leader. Not the regular alt art, but I have the Kaizoku cards alt art, which we are also. Shout out to my dude. This Moonlight TCG tournament is getting a lot of love in this video, but we are giving away a Kaizoku cards Perona leader as well. I'm gonna put it up on the screen right now, and it looks so good. And anytime I play Perona, I'm gonna be using that leader in particular. You can win one at our tournament. More details will be in a different video on top of also in the Discord if you decide to join. So the signups are on our website, moonlighttcg.com. So plug over. So yeah, Perona I think is really powerful. I think not only was it my waifu whenever I was younger, so like I'm into like the emo girls, everybody knows that. I'm into girls that can step on me with spiked boots and just crush my skull. Bro, where's this video going, bro? No, but like Perona, yeah, that like good leader, good art, was my crush when I was 10 years old. So we'll move to Black Yellow Luffy. I swear to God, guys, I don't understand this leader. I don't know if it's like a skill thing or what, but I don't understand this leader, and I don't understand like how it wins against like most decks, because it just like it just doesn't do anything if you don't attack. Now, of course, it has favorable matchups into Gecko and like just any black deck because it has access to Sabo. And I think that is how you win, but it's like such a weird deck, bro. Like I still don't get it, but I know other people get it. It just doesn't really speak to me that way. So Lucci Black Yellow Luffy is going to be good into a lot of these matchups. I think it's going to be good. I do think it is going to be good into like things like Red Purple Law as well. Even though it's like Red Purple Law technically beats this because like Shiraya, but I feel like if you play cards to like get around Shiraya, I feel like this deck can actually like just like win, right? Like Shiraya is the only leader or the only card that can even touch this leader. So, I'm just curious. Maybe it's because like it just bottom decks all the 5 costs. I'm not sure. If you guys know this matchup a little bit better than I do, I still haven't tested Luffy entirely yet into Law because I just don't understand this leader as of yet. Or I understand the concept of it, but I don't understand its intricacies into some of these matchups just yet until I do my testing. So if you guys know why this deck why it's not one of the best decks, let me know. Because I know it's gonna be really good, but I know it's not gonna be one of the best decks, even though Lucci is. So like, just let me know. I guess just let me know in the comments below. Gecko Moria, I think is just really solid. I do think Lucci is just a better black deck than Gecko Moria in entirely. Like Lucci has more removal. They're both 5 life leaders, and like Lucci has access to just like better tech cards, I feel like, than Gecko Moria, and having access to Stussy really does answer Gecko. On top of their Gecko Moria is like Sakazuki, where you can play like on your 8 Dawn turn, you can play like 22 Dawn worth of stuff. You can play like Gecko into what is it called? Rebecca into Helmeppo, and Rebecca gets back Spandin, and then Spandin gets back Lucci from the trash. So you just play all those characters. It's literally 5 characters for 8 Dawn, and if you're at 9 or 10 Dawn, combine that with like Ice Age or Tempest Kick Sky Slicer, you can literally just KO like a 10 cost. Like it's absolutely unreal. So yeah, I think Lucci is just better than Gecko, but I still think Gecko is really good at like grinding out in games. Because obviously it's trashes its resource. On top of it, playing Isho now is really strong. So I do think it probably has a better matchup into something like Black Yellow Luffy. And maybe like some other matchups, like maybe a Nell or something like that. But I don't think Gecko is the best 5 life black leader in set 7. Doflamingo. The only thing about Doflamingo is it just loses so hard to like black decks, dude. It's the same with Boa. Like it can't really like survive like Gecko. Like it feels like not just Gecko, but like your stuff just gets popped like all the time. I think it has a better matchup into something like Gecko Moria than it does Lucci, because Lucci just has way more removal with the Ineos Lobby. Obviously the leader -1, and then the stage, or I'm sorry, and then Tempest Kick. And Gecko, I don't think has access to that. Actually, I'm curious as like Gecko doesn't play. Like what cost reduction does Gecko play next set? I'm very interested to know. If you guys know that too, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, it's just really hard for this deck to beat like some of these black decks that have heavy removal. I do think it can easily beat Red Purple Law because it just floods the board and plays cards from the top of its deck, so it doesn't really realistically need a lot of cards in hand. It's also a 5 life leader. It plays the Draw Dragon as well, the 10 cost Kaido. So I do think it's going to be good into Law. I think it's going to be okay into Bonnie. This deck doesn't play a whole lot of like removal for top end like Boa does, so I do think Bonnie could give it problems with like a 8 cost kid, especially 2 8 cost kids, if they get it out on curves. So like that could be a problem. But I could see this deck like getting into like a top 16 or a top 32, like maybe like one of them. And then Whitebeard obviously has, I feel like, a pretty good matchup in some of these decks. I feel like Whitebeard could be good into like red. Probably not Black Yellow Luffy. I think Whitebeard's like low key, like it sounds crazy, but I feel like Whitebeard's like low key good into like Gecko Moria, just because like I don't know, like Gecko just has a bunch of 5k characters, and like for them to like do their turn, they're not normally swinging 6s. Like they need their extra Dawn to do like other stuff, like play cost reduction and then play removal. So like realistically, there's a few turns where like Gecko like can't actually hit. Like most of their characters can't actually hit Whitebeard except for their leader, and then Whitebeard easily just 1k or 2ks out of that, or just takes the life if they don't care about countering. So yeah, I do think Whitebeard is just going to be like one of those decks you're just always going to see. This deck is like never dead. I don't think there's ever going to be a time where this deck is just not really good. Good for Whitebeard players, right? Like you guys since the beginning of the game pretty much have just had a leader that just like is always viable. So, if you want to invest in some alt arts, I don't think this leader's ever getting banned again. He's more fair now than he used to be, but he's still like good, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's a really good category. Let's talk about the Moonlight Pro Circuit category. MoonlightTCG.com Pro Circuit. So we have Yamato here. I think Yamato is going to be the same thing as Whitebeard, where it's like always going to be relevant, and you're going to see one in the top 64 because they just like guerrilla warfare, like punch their opponent in the face and just kill them before they can really react. I think the more we get rest cards and the more we get like good triggers or like, I don't know, like aggro cards for yellow or green, I think this deck is just going to see like this, like someone's going to try to play it and like they're going to like, get some favorable matchups and win some games. I can see 1 or 2 of these being in the top 64. I can't really see this deck being consistently in like a top 32 range, but you know, if people really like the deck, then you know, I admire them for playing it. Because it's just like, honestly, I do think this deck is fun. Like, I think this deck is fun because it's just so, like, sometimes it's good to turn off your brain. You know, I love myself, my Pookie Bear Sakazuki, but like playing that deck in a 9 or 10 round tournament is just like really exhausting because like, it's just every single decision you make matters. Whereas like Yamato, it's like, am I swinging 8 or am I swinging 9? What do I do here? And it's just like, I don't know, bro. It's like not really like, it's fun sometimes to like do that, you know? Reiju as well. I've seen people, VV Theory specifically has been talking about Reiju. A couple people in my Discord have been talking about Reiju actually doing some stuff in OPO7. I thought this deck was just dead in the water as soon as Red Purple Law became relevant, but as long as you dodge Red Purple Law and like look at all these decks in the top cut, so you might actually, I mean, you could dodge Red Purple Law for the most part. But as long as you dodge Red Purple Law, I feel like this deck is somewhat viable. I'm not sure exactly on the matchups. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. We might have to do like a Patreon type thing for this deck. Speaking of though, if you guys want to check out my Patreon, I'm gonna be posting a lot of the masterclasses on there. For some leaders that I do think in this top cut bracket right here, this top bracket that can what is it called? Can compete in a tournament. So I'm gonna be going over all the matchups and stuff like that. Some deck, my deck that I choose, and then some deck techs that are you know, viable into the meta. So be sure to check that out. Links in the description below too, in the link tree. And you're not gonna find my OnlyFans in the link tree too. So unless you guys want to, you know, let me know. So Red Yellow Sabo. I'm a fan of Red Yellow Sabo. I think this deck is really aggressive. And I think it has like matchups where it just absolutely destroys somebody. Like, I realistically think this deck can like destroy Whitebeard. I realistically think this deck can destroy something like Red Purple Law. I think this deck can destroy things like just like any deck that like loses to aggression, you know, like not a lot of these decks lose to aggression, you know, like Whitebeard doesn't realistically lose to aggression. Like Law kinda does, if they like in the style that Sabo can actually go aggro. I think Law might actually lose to that because they can't bottom deck anything. So like realistically, they're just like using their leader effect to do basically nothing. And this deck plays a lot of bricks too, so like I could see it just like losing to like infinite life, almost like one life gain per turn, you know, what is it called, Sabo, and then them punching in for like 7 or 8k like every single turn. I can see it like I can see a route where like they have played a lot of favorable matchups, something like you know, like something like possibly what is it called, a Nell, and then like Law, and then like maybe like Whitebeard potentially, and they're just able to just like out sustain those decks and then like out aggro them, and then like they get into the top 64. But like I said, I can't really see them that happening too much. Same with Crocodile. Like Crocodile is like a very infinitely like life gain sustainy kind of deck, and it does thrive. The reason it's not good now is because it doesn't do good into like heavy removal, and it doesn't really do good into Red Purple Law, but more so Red Purple Law. Like this deck can actually outpace, or it can out sustain and out tank heavy removal to a degree, but like they also like, it can't be in the way that like Sakazuki does it, where like they like, you know, have heavy removal and then build a board. So like Lucci now is the new Sakazuki, and like this deck probably loses to that, but I do and it also loses to Law too, which is why it's in this, you know, bracket right here. But I could see a route where this deck could actually beat Lucci potentially if they just like draw a bunch of like heal cards and then like, you know, like squeak by like a win or two. But it's gonna be really tough because like I said, the two best decks are like probably its like worst matchup. Like Law can just like kill this before it reaches like not 8, 9 or 10 dawn, and that's really where the deck thrives. And obviously if it can't keep its Crocodiles or Yamatos or 10 cost aces on the board, then like what is the deck realistically doing? So yeah, that's Crocodile. Uta as well. we're going to talk more about like the top 64, like the top 64 and higher decks we'll talk more about, and then we'll kind of skip over, or not skip over, but we'll like kind of go a little bit more of a speed round for like the other decks down here. But Uta as well is a deck that loses to heavy removal. I do think this deck can beat Red Purple Law, especially with access to cards like 8-cost Kid, and just how much card advantage it has. It has access to 10-cost Dofi as well. All of the good, top end cards that Boa has access to, or I'm sorry, Bonnie has access to. But the problem is it just loses to like, you wiping its board. It loses to just like, I mean, that's pretty much it, honestly. Now that I think about it, it just loses to like you wiping its board. And I just don't see like a route where like you don't play like a couple Luchis. And I feel like this deck might also lose to Bonnie as well, because Bonnie has access to all the same top end, but like it can like stall a little bit better than Uta can. And then it's like Bonnie being able to like basically like shut down like one blocker per turn. Like it feels like its 9-cost Zoro can just like punch into Bonnie, whereas into Uta. But Uta doesn't play 9-cost Zoro, so like it's gonna probably hide behind the Kid wall, and then like once per turn your blocker, unless you just don't attack, like your blocker is gonna go like get rested by Bonnie, and then Zoro's just gonna keep punching into the Kid wall until it just dies, and like that's obviously how I feel like they win that matchup. So I guess to sum it up, I feel like Bonnie just has better ways of closing out games than Uta into that matchup, and also Uta loses heavily into decks like Lucci, without having the benefit of like, being able to slow down the game like Bonnie can, which is why even though they play very similar cards, in top end wise, Bonnie's leader effect is just overall better, and it's better at like stalling games out and letting like 9-cost Zoro, 10-cost Dofi, or 8-cost Kid like kind of control the game. Whereas this is like a little bit more aggro in the beginning, but it does lose to like, other thing. Like it loses to more things than Bonnie does, because Bonnie doesn't rely on aggro strategies. It relies on like stalling the game out a little bit longer. And a lot of these decks in the top cut, the longer the game goes on, it feels like you're gonna win a lot better. Like for example, like Whitebeard right here. I feel like obviously Bonnie destroys Whitebeard because obviously 9-cost Zoro is really powerful, but also Bonnie into Black Yellow Luffy because it just can shut down a blocker once per turn. It could also just survive for forever. Same thing like into Enel, 9-cost Zoro ends Enel. So like it just feels like Uta just doesn't have realistically like the answers that like Bonnie has in like slowing down the game as much. So even with the card advantage it generates. Red Purple Luffy is an interesting one though. Red Purple Luffy is a deck that like can realistically beat a lot of these top cut decks. Like it can beat Law, it can beat Whitebeard, it can beat Black Yellow Luffy. It can beat probably Perona, I would say as well. I don't think it can beat something like Bonnie. I don't think it can beat something like Lucci either. But like I said, this is a top 64 deck. It's just like it doesn't really get anything too crazy in the next set. It's just a really good who would have thought a 6-life lead or a 6K leader would just be really good. Now the reason it's not that great right now is because like I mean, actually, I don't really know why it's not that great right now. It just isn't. It just isn't. But like, I know for a fact, like, some of these decks, if they see it, like it having access to like these like cards that just steal games, like the Sun God Nika Luffy, and then like now it has access to, I guess, Dragon too. If are there any other purple cards that are actually like coming out in set 7? I just think this deck has good matchups going into like some of these decks, and it's just a really powerful deck that can steal games. It can just absolutely destroy Reiju. It feels like it can absolutely destroy, like I said, like LOL potentially, because it's just a 6K leader. With obviously access to like really powerful cards that Law can't really get off the board. It's just a naturally good leader that has like really crazy powerful potential, very similar to Kaido. But it doesn't revolve around getting Oni. It also doesn't revolve around like killing things, which is why Kaido isn't that great, because Sabo just like kind of stops it in its track. Whereas Kaido doesn't realistically want to kill you as quick as possible, whereas Luffy does. It's like Kaido's strategy is different, which is why Kaido is actually more, it's in locals fun. And Luffy revolves around killing you quickly. Kaido revolves around just dominating the board and then killing you. Which is why I think Kaido probably loses more in this meta than Red Purple Luffy does, even though they both play like just really big guys and try to overwhelm you. But Luffy tries to do it and then kills you. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if that does make sense, guys. Then we'll talk about Boa. I'm really excited about Boa. I think Boa, is just a deck. I mean, you guys already saw my what is it called? My masterclass on Boa. If you haven't, obviously check it out. It's like a video I just posted a couple days ago. But Boa is just like, it loses so hard to black decks that like remove like Gecko Moria and Lucci, but it can realistically beat like almost anything else. Like it just destroys like some of the best decks in this like tier in this category. It just wipes off the board. Like it's a free win. Like it can destroy red purple Luffy, it can destroy Bonnie, it can destroy black yellow Luffy, it can it's favored into Whitebeard. Actually it destroys Whitebeard too. It's favored into Dofi, it's favored into Perona. It's like an uphill battle into Enel, but there's tech card, like you can play 10 cost Kaido if you want to make the Enel matchup a little bit better. Like it has so many great matchups. I could see it being in really good. It's just like, it depends on how many of these like black decks that you play against, because it legitimately is just so hard to win that game, bro. Like how do you beat it? Like how do you beat a deck that just like plays removal better than you do? Like I don't know, man. Zoro's another one. Like Zoro just like having like guys, like aggro is never dead, bro. Like the same reason Whitebeard's good, the same reason Zoro is going to be good. Like I played against a Zoro in the Treasure Cup a couple weeks ago, and he almost beat me. I had to counter out of a 14k Diable Jumble. But like, and luckily I had enough counter, but like this deck, like attacking 7k at life like every turn, sometimes multiple times. Like how do you beat decks like that? Like they can legitimately, like the same reason that like I said, like red purple Luffy can like steal games is the same reason like Zoro can steal games. It just like kills people, bro. Like, and there's nothing you can do about it sometimes. So like Zoro's just I feel like Zoro's just always going to be like somewhat relevant, you know, especially if there's like 4 life leaders that like, the reason Zoro is probably worse now than it, like worse in set 7 than it is right now is because like you know, the best deck is a 4 life leader that's like kind of fragile, which is obviously Sakazuki, but like the best decks right now are mostly 5 life leaders, and then like Law would like just take character away every turn. So like that, and like Law can also aggro Zoro out too. So like that's the only reason that I think Zoro is not going to be as good, but I think it'll sneak in some of the I think it'll sneak in depending on some of the matchups. But I think probably Zoro might actually be the worst deck in this category. I'm not going to lie. Katakuri is just Katakuri. It's just 10 cost Big Mom on top of triggers. So, you know, if luck finds them that day, then they'll top. Trust me. There's always going to be a Katakuri player for sure. So that's the like the most important of the decks, right? I will say this is a pretty healthy meta. I like this meta a lot. I mean, because think of it like this, right? Like if we were going to do a tier list right now, it would like the only decks even worth playing would be like yellow, what is it? Yellow, black Luffy, black, yellow Luffy, Gecko, Law, and Sakazuki. And like Enel, I guess, would be one of them. But after that, that's like that's 5 decks, right? But like look at this. Like if you're looking into it, like if you're trying to get like just like your first top 64, there's realistic, like from this tier list alone, there's like what, like 13, 14, 15 decks that can get like a top 64 potentially. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 decks that can realistically like contend. And maybe one of these down below could make a top 64, but it's not as likely. Like legitimately that's pretty good, dude. That's pretty good. So like this is a really healthy time to get into the game, man. I'm not gonna lie, this is a really healthy time to get into the game. I think prices are the only thing that's like a little bit concerning, because like I said, if you guys watch my market watch video, Captain Kids are like $43, you know, Sabo's like $20, and then you have like Borsalino's like $50. Like it's crazy, bro. Like the prices are crazy, but like the meta is pretty healthy. So there's a lot of decks you can choose from in set 7 to like realistically like be competitive. So without further ado, let's talk about locals fun now. Now I'm always trying to make fun decks work at locals. Like sometimes I'll sweat, I'll play like Sakazuki or like another like meta deck. But pretty much like since this game came out, like you guys know me as a meta player now, but like since this game came out, like I've always been trying to make off meta decks work. I mean, for like the first like 2.5 months of set 1, I was playing Blurple Croc, and then I switched to Kid at the end, and I was like, holy shit, like winning is so much easier now. I'm playing like a deck that can actually win. But then like in set 2, I try to play Kaido, right? In set 3, I try to play Katakuri into like Law and like all these other decks, and I switched to Law, but Law going into like Fire Fist was not very fun. And sometimes Whitebeard wasn't as free as you might think because they can just rush you down before you have time to set up, and also like, you know, bad draws. But for the most part, I would say I've been like more like 70% focused on like having fun and like 30% more so focused on like playing meta decks. It just so happens that my favorite deck is Sakazuki. So like that being said, the reason I'm yapping about this is because like I like to do stuff like this. I like to like make decks, like bring decks to locals and try to see if I could win with them. Especially if other people are playing meta or like, you know, just other like good decks in general. And these are all the other decks that I would consider bringing into a locals to try to like win. Funny enough, I do think Iceberg has some potential. Like the cards it got from EBO1 are actually pretty good. I think the only thing holding Iceberg back now is like just like a good like late game like option, like something that's not Rush Kaido. So like whatever, like obviously I think all the set 8 cards are already leaked, and I don't think we're really getting anything too much. Maybe the Big Mom, I don't remember what the Big Mom does, the 9-cost one, but yeah, it just needs some top end. Law, red green Law just loses to removal obviously, but if you're a good player and run into some like fun decks along the way at locals, you can definitely like, honestly, you can terrorize. If you're a good player, you can terrorize locals with this deck. Like even I don't think you're gonna lose. Even a bad player, you're probably gonna lose them if they're playing like Lucci. But like I think you could beat like Gecko realistically, because like they don't realistically see a whole lot of removal early on. Like the best thing you can do is like play like Perona turn 1 and then the Absalom turn 2, and by that point turn 3 you should have like a full board and be ready to do all of your plays. Kaido obviously gets a searcher for Onigashima, so that's really powerful. Foxy, he's interesting, bro. I don't know where Foxy's gonna be, bro. Like his effect is insane, bro. He's like a 10-cost Dofi like all the time. But like you have to rest like the Foxy Pirates cards. And from what I've gathered, the Foxy Pirate cards aren't very good. So like that's the only unfortunate thing about Foxy is like I think if they gave this card like actual support, this deck would actually be like legitimately like good. Because like the leader effect, like Dawn -3 to like freeze 3 characters is actually like really insane. So like you can pretty much just like lock your opponent's board for like forever. But the problem is like they can play characters over them, so it's like kind of like what do you do at that point? So that's the only issue with it. Also, once again, Foxy Pirate cards kind of suck. So, Sanji Zoro, I don't really know a whole lot about this deck, but I know VV Theory loves this deck, so he thinks it has some sauce. This deck can play 10-cost Big Mom. Bro, okay, so Blue-Yellow Ace is interesting, bro. Blue-Yellow Ace is really interesting because this is the only leader in the entire set that is very consistently going to be a 7K leader, and like the power that this deck has is real. Like this deck is probably the most consistent of all of the other like starter deck leaders. So like realistically, this deck is like can be a 7K leader all the time, and having the ability to like have like a searcher for like what you need every turn is really good. And I think you do need 2 Dawn for it, but still like if you have like a little brother in hand and like all you need is a big brother, like you can search the top 5 on top of having shit like Garp and like 3 Brothers Bond. Like it feels like this deck is like hyper consistently like a 7K leader all the time. The only thing is like blue doesn't like add anything to this like leader. If this leader was like any other color, I feel like it would be just better overall, but blue like didn't really like do anything for this leader in particular. So yeah, I still think like 7K leader good. It's like just like I guess the math behind it. Blurple Kaido, just honestly just yeah, it's a good leader. Just being able to ramp so quick, and you have another searcher now for Oni, so like there's no way you don't see Oni. It's just missing the same thing that Foxy's missing. It's missing same thing Kaido's missing. We just need a good purple card, guys, and we also need a fucking good blue card, bro. But Bandai, if you're seeing this, bro, I'm so sick of like having like no like good blue like big guys ever, bro. Like why can't you give us a card like Stussy? Like why does Stussy have to be like black, and why can't like Stussy just be like blue? Like on play bottom deck anything if you like, you know, bottom deck like 1 card from your hand or like 1 card on your field or something like that. Like give us something. Fuck, dude. Like I'm just so sick of like purple being like kind of like mistreated until like OPO 8 where like we get Black Maria, which is a broken card, but you know a deck that utilizes it probably the best is fucking Law, it feels like. So yeah, it's just annoying. Queen, really good life gain. I feel like it can stall out a bunch of games and like just like it's just really powerful. Obviously the more good triggers you get, the better this deck becomes. I think this deck is just fun in general. And can just like win. Dragon, really good aggro deck, just like Luffy. just Dawn Manipulation's really good. It can rush you down, very similar to Zoro, but I do think that like this is probably going to be not as good as Zoro or Whitebeard, but it could be. This is a deck that could actually be an MLPC. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe we put it in. I'm going to put it in MLPC because I think that like just aggro is just good in general. Purple Luffy, I think Kaido is just better overall, but I think Purple Luffy is good. Kaido just has a better top end than Purple Luffy. And now Kaido actually has a, Onigashima Searcher where it's like consistently ramping, and now you don't have to take your own life for it, and you have access to 10 cost Kaido. I think it's just better than Purple Luffy in general. Arlong aggro deck, really good. Like I said, the more triggers that come, the better. I don't want to make this video too long, guys, because I kind of want to play some video games too, but all these cards right here, this local, I know my camera's blocking it. This is locals jank. If you guys want to take these locals, you'll have a lot of fun probably, but they're not probably going to win locals. You might go like X1, X2, and just have fun along the way. And why all these decks are completely trash, there's no reason to play them, especially Lucci. Lucci had to get another leader because it was so bad. That is literally a 5-life leader. It's just a better version. So yeah, bad. All of them are bad. Grape Dofi, the only reason to play this is just like because you like Birdcage, I guess. But yeah, and then Nami, we're not talking about it. So yeah, guys, much love to you guys. Like I said, if you guys want to join the Moonlight TCG Pro Tour, let me know. In the comments below if you're going to be joining. If you qualify of joining, obviously you're free to join. Check out our Discord, Moonlight TCG Discord. Obviously, Moonlight TCG's website will have the information on there. And I'll see you guys on my next video. Peace.